Today I'm coming to you from my lounge room, and that's because I really couldn't be bothered to set up in my library at the moment, and the lighting in the library is nowhere near as nice as it is out here right now. So bear with me, we've got no books in the background, but we have got a stack of 13 books, almost 13 books that I read in January that I want to go through and talk about with you. So I'm just making a tea, and once that's ready, we will get into all of the books that I read in January. And that way I can return them all and pick up my other library holds that are waiting for me. We are back. I have my tea. I actually made some noodles as well, so they're off. They're over there waiting for me. And we're going to go through all 13 books that I read in January and what I thought about them and how I feel about my reading in January. So grab a tea, sit down. My name's Amity. This is Read by Amity, and we're going to jump straight in. Okay, so the first book that I read in January is one that I just picked up from the library on a whim. I saw the cover, I thought that it looked really interesting and maybe speculative, maybe sci-fi. I read a little bit of the back and it seemed like it was going to be very hard-hitting, kind of just like a dissection of grief and death and, you know, what we mean to each other. All of that good stuff. So I thought it looked short. I'm definitely going to pick it up. And that one is I Am Homeless If This Is Not My Home by Lorrie Moore. I really enjoyed the start of this, and it was the first book that I picked up in 2026. And I was really determined to be more engaged with my books in 2026. So I was doing my own version of the anti-brain rot challenge, where I mainly am just focusing on the critical media journal aspect of it and making sure that I am really engaging with all of the books that I read. And so I was really engaging with the start of this, and it was being set up to be so impactful. I could see what the author was trying to say. I could feel myself getting attached to the characters. So essentially this is about the main character, Finn, and he is encountering loss in his life in many different aspects, and it's kind of just following him learning how to deal with grieving and coping with loss. And the first 50 pages, it's very short. It's only, what is it? Under 200 pages, roughly 193, I think it was, 193, something like that. So it's only 193 pages. The first 50 pages were really interesting and I was hooked. So Finn's visiting his brother in a hospice facility, and he's talking with his brother about his life and things that they maybe could have done different and how things have turned out, and, you know, what's in store for Finn afterwards and all of this sort of stuff. And they're kind of skirting around the topic. And for a bit there, I'm thinking to myself, is his brother Max already gone? Is this just a reality where Finn is wishing that he was able to say all of these things to Max and wishing that he actually visited him before he died, you know, all of that sort of thing. So yeah, I was really enjoying the start. There were a few things here and there that I was like, oh, you know, I didn't like how that was done. Anyway, the book takes a twist, and non-spoilery, he ends up getting a phone call and he has to leave his brother's bedside and go and deal with this other thing that's happening. And I just found it completely derailed the story, even though the part with his brother is only at the beginning, and the phone call with this other element is like the main premise of the story, and the trajectory that it's meant to take, it takes. I was just so unsatisfied with it. So unfortunately for me, this one ended up being pretty disappointing, and despite the fact that there were a lot of great moments where what was being said by the author felt really impactful and I was really enjoying those parts, I ended up rating it 2 stars because while it wasn't a terrible 1-star book that I would never think about again, I think about this book all the time, but I mainly think about how annoyed I was. It got quite horrific. It got quite graphic. There were lots of speculative moments that made me question if we were dealing with an unreliable narrator, if this was magical realism, or if it was actually like physically happening for Finn in front of him, or if it was just like a metaphor for things. And I never really got that answered either. So I actually don't really know what could have made this better. I just felt like it left me feeling unsatisfied, and it felt like things were unresolved, even though technically they were resolved. The other thing that I really didn't like about this book is that there was a second POV, and for the longest time, you weren't really getting any sort of connecting pieces between the two storylines. So Finn's storyline and then the second POV, her name was Elizabeth, I want to say, or Eliz is how she is referred to for most of it. And we're kind of just reading her letters to someone. And so I don't really know why we got her POV to begin with, because even when it did finally connect at the end and we did see how they were related, for what though? Like, there was no reason for it. She was just a second storyline, and it was like a completely different storyline. Anyway, I just left this book feeling a little bit confused and a little bit unsatisfied, and so ultimately it was 2-star, and I was really sad about that because it was my first read of the year, and I love starting the year off with a 5-star. So that is I Am Homeless If This Is Not My Home by Lorrie Moore. I will say I probably will read more Lorrie Moore because despite the story not being satisfying, the writing was really good. The second book I read in January was The Butcher of the Forest by Premee Mohamed. And this one, I'm glad to say, I'm sorry, the reflection of the window makes it hard to see. This one, I'm glad to say, was a 5-star read, and I still think about this every single day. I definitely want to get myself a copy because this is the library's copy. This one is extremely impactful and a little bit whimsy, very dark. I found that it had a lot of elements that I have been craving in my books recently. I feel like there's something, and there's another book in this stack that I'll talk about that links to this, but there's something very hard to capture in fantasy, horror, speculative fiction, and I think there's a few books that do it perfectly and make that connection between whimsy and horror and real world commentary and folky fantasy type commentary. So I love when a book can do it well, and this one, which is another very short book, does it incredibly well. This is about a girl named, I think her name is Varys. Hang on. Let's see what her name is. Varys, yeah. So this is about a woman named Varys, and at first I thought it was a younger girl, but actually the character is in her like mid-30s or early 40s, I think. She's just about to turn 40. And she is summoned by the Tyrant, which is like the king style leader character in the book, to go into the forest and find his missing children. So she goes on an adventure into the forest against her will, basically. He's basically said, I will kill your family and everyone you love if you don't go and get my children. So she feels like she has no choice. Anyway, she goes into this forest and everything is not as it seems, and we have a forest that kind of fights back. It's a secret forest within the forest that fights back, and it's very I say this in every single video, I'm not kidding. Very goblin market, in a very fairy world, in where you have to really be careful what you say and what you do. You can't make deals, you can't barter with anything, because there are rules in place that benefit the creatures and beings in the forest that would keep humans trapped there for whatever reason. So, she has to have her wits about her, and in the past, anyone that has gone into the forest has never come out again. If you go missing into the forest, you're gone forever. And so the reason why the tyrant had chose her for this was because there were rumors, and it was known amongst the village and all of the people there that a child went missing in the forest, and Varys had gone into that forest and got the child out, and it was the only time ever in history that someone had gone into the forest and come back out again. So anyway, really, really, really good book. There's a blurb on the back that I didn't read until after I finished the book, and I think it explains it perfectly. It says, Hansel and Gretel meet annihilation in Premee Mohamed's The Butcher in the Forest, a fairy tale that shifts into a meditation on war and grief, one that asks questions about who is innocent and who is complicit in oppression. Come for the eldritch monsters, stay as always for Mohamed's critiques of power. That's 100% correct. It makes you question everything in such a clever way, and in so little pages as well. And on top of that, it is so whimsy and so fun, and I just want more of this. So this, of course, was a 5-star for me, and it will probably end up being on my best books of 2026. So definitely recommend this one. Okay, so the next book that I read in January is Dead of Winter by Darcy Coates. This one I listened to on audiobook, and it was the book club book for January for the Cozy Coven, which is Lachlan from Locke's Library's Patreon Discord book club. And there is something about Darcy Coates' writing that is so different to everyone else that is doing work in that genre. She writes a lot of paranormal, ghost style, haunting style, exorcist, that kind of horror. She has a large backlist of regular horror as well. Like she writes a lot of different types of horror, but I find that some of her most popular horror work is in the paranormal haunting side of things. Anyway, so I went into this knowing that I was probably going to enjoy it. Jordan from Book Usually Joe, who's also part of the Cozy Coven, had already read it and rated it 5 stars. And so I knew, because our reading taste matches up quite a bit, that I was going to love it as well. The last Darcy Coates I had read was The Haunting of Ashburn House, I think it's called, which I really enjoyed as well. So I went into it with high expectations, and it delivered almost on every point. I love a trapped, I don't know what the trope's called, but when everyone is trapped in a log cabin or a ski cabin or somewhere where they're secluded from the rest of the population, there's elemental things like, they're snowed in, or there's a massive storm or a blackout or something. Something is stopping them from being able to get back to civilization, and then shit starts to go south. I love when a book does that and does it well, and Darcy Coates knocked it out of the park. I felt like I was spending so much time trying to figure out what was going on that whenever the horror elements came into it, I was blown away. I forgot that I'm reading a horror book because I'm so fixated on the thriller mystery aspect of it that things were happening and the way they were being described, I was just like, oh my God, disgusted, but in the best way possible. So definitely loved that one. It did get a little bit predictable there and a little bit slow in about 3/4 of the way in, but I love the way that it got wrapped up. And it's not often that a book starts so strong and then kind of dips and then comes back to being great at the end. So very much enjoyed that one, and I'm just getting my rating up for that. Just because there were a few bits and pieces there here and there where I felt like it was a little bit of a lull. I couldn't give it the full 5 stars, but it was a 4.5 star rating for me, and that means that it is also a favorite of mine. I don't really know what to say about the book without potentially spoiling elements of it that could make your enjoyment less, but if you enjoy that kind of Ruth Ware style mystery thriller with a dash of horror in it, you'll probably love this one. So definitely recommend that one. The next book I read in January was City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. This is book 1 in the Mortal Instruments series, and you will see many more Cassandra Clare books in this wrap up and probably many future wrap ups as well, because I'm currently doing the year-long buddy read with Tyler from Fanboy Reads and a few other people, and we are going through the entire Shadowhunter universe. So January was the Mortal Instruments book 1 through 3. So we started with, obviously, City of Bones. And I haven't read this since 2015 or 2016. And I was already craving that kind of nostalgic early booktube style paranormal, that kind of fantasy. So when he announced that he was going to be doing a full, mostly year-long buddy read of the series, of the universe, I thought, absolutely, I need to jump in on that. I did, unfortunately, about 6 or 7 years ago, get rid of all of my Shadowhunter books because I just wasn't reading them. I'd read the first trilogy and book 1 of the Infernal Devices, and then I'd read book 1 of the Dark Artifices, but I had just been collecting the books for the sake of collecting them with no interest in reading them after that. So I did end up getting rid of the entire collection that I had, and so I did have to borrow all of them, but I'm pleased to tell you that I had such a blast reading these books this month, just gone, that when I went to the Lifeline Book Fair yesterday, I actually picked up copies of at least the five out of the 6 Model Instrument books, and then also the Infernal Devices books. I haven't touched the Dark Artifices or whatever the newest trilogy is yet, or any of the side stories and anthologies, because I know that I enjoyed these ones so much that I want my own copies again. I don't know if I will get all of them. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent. So yes, I reread The City of Bones this year, and it was everything that I wanted from the series. I just really enjoyed being back in that world. It was so fun and had me feeling everything that I felt as a teenager reading these books. So when I say teenager, it was 2015, so actually no, I was an adult. And it just had me feeling some type of way because I feel like we haven't, it almost feels whimsy in a way now because it's been such a long time. Sorry, I need to move. It's been such a long time since we've had stories like this, and that's probably because we've grown. YA has changed a little bit since then, but this was just so much fun. I will say that there's definitely elements in the book that don't hold up as well as the years have gone on, but it was fun nonetheless. So this one got a 4 stars from me, which was my original rating for the book as well. I am looking at it with a different eye than what I did when I first read it. When I read it originally, it was a 4-star just because I really enjoyed the book, and I had not read much fantasy before that because I was only just getting back into reading. But this one now, I was looking for nostalgia, which I got. I was looking for paranormal worlds, which I got. I was looking for teen angst and longing and all of those strong emotions that teenage characters have, which I got. I was looking for fun magic systems and all of the different, paranormal creatures that you can get, which I got. And I was looking for that feeling that a early 2000s, 2010, that style, that era of book could give me. And so this gave me everything that I wanted from that. Is it well-written literature, perfect, stands the test of time? Probably not. And for me, it definitely could be more diverse, and the writing could afford to have a little less misogyny throughout it, but I can look past that in that this is what I wanted at the time and I was able to enjoy it for what it is. So definitely a big fan of jumping back into this world and rereading The Mortal Instruments. So loved it. The next book that I read in January was actually an e-arc that I requested from NetGalley, and that one is Eye in the Shadows by Tori Bovalino. Now, Tori Bovalino published The Second Death of Locke under the pen name VL Bovalino last year, which was a big hit in the reading community, and I loved that one, but the reason why I requested this one was because in 2023, possibly 2024, I read another one of her YA horror books, Not Good for Maidens, and it could have been Not Good Enough for Maidens. That one was an absolute favorite of mine, and I still think about it all the time. And I think that that's what I'm constantly hunting for, is something that gave me the same feeling that Not Good for Maidens gave me. Anyway, we're not talking about that now. We're talking about Eye in the Shadows. So Eye in the Shadows is a YA horror, and this one follows a number of teenagers, and one of them died in a car accident a year before the story starts. And so he is stuck haunting his house, essentially. His family have moved and a new family have moved in, and in that new family is Drew, who is able to see ghosts and speak with ghosts, and Drew's sibling and Drew also have worked with ghosts in the past to help them move on. So because Drew's sibling is away at school, Drew is now feeling like they are tasked with figuring out how to help Liam move on. And we go from there. And this was devastating. I loved it so much. We kind of had a coming of age story. It had queer representation through the roof. It was exploring really dark and hard topics, and through a lens of teenagers that are already grappling with the difficulties of growing up and trying to figure out who you are and losing people that you love, and it was just incredible. It ended up being a 4-star rating for me. I might revisit it again once I get my hands on a physical copy, and I could see it potentially becoming a 5-star read, but I just felt like it was almost there. It was almost there, but it just didn't quite make it. But I highly recommend picking that one up. And in general, I highly recommend picking up any of Tori Bovalino's work because they are a phenomenal writer. And I just love the way that horror is explored in their books. So very much enjoyed that one. The next one that I read in January was Feast While You Can by Mikaella Clements and Onjuli Datta. And I desperately wanted this one to be a 5-star read for me. And so I feel like, unfortunately, I was just constantly waiting for it to pick up and, be more than what it was. So that's on me. I had my expectations way too high for it. It was still a 4-star read, so I still loved it. There was just something that I wanted, and I think maybe it was more of, this was like a very quiet horror. This was one of those books that explores horror in a way where the horror is the normal things that are happening in the world. The things that are happening are normal to everyone in the story and horrific to us. And it has that unsettling feeling where you want them to react differently to how they're reacting because something is horrific to you reading it, but to them it's normal. So having those paranormal, supernatural elements while also having a commentary on the way that people are demonized for being queer, for being different, and, turning that into horror itself. So yeah, this one was really good. Then I read City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare. This is book 2 in the Mortal Instruments series. And this one was also a 4-star read for me. We're now diving further into the history of the Shadowhunters, Clary's familial history and background, and we're exploring more of each character's story. So I did really enjoy this. The plot kind of continued on from book 1, but it took a different trajectory because of things that happened at the end of book 1. Definitely more in this in terms of plot substance, but unfortunately that romance undertone to it all gets completely changed by that plot twist in book 1. And so I was both torn because in terms of plot, this was one of the better books out of the series, but in terms of that romance, it just felt kind of icky the entire time. And so this one got a 4-star rating for me as well. Originally, I rated it 3 stars. I did bump it up this read through because I really enjoyed myself. I'm having such a great time in this world. So definitely enjoyed that one. Then we read my next 5-star read of the month, and that one is The Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love by India Holton. And this was incredible. Literally right from the beginning of the book, it set the tone perfectly. I loved the humor that we were getting. I loved the language that it was written in. The characters were intriguing to me. I didn't think that I would enjoy a book about bird watching and bird preservation and catching as much as I did, but this felt magical. It felt like it was set in a real world setting, but as you're reading along, there are magical elements to it. So it was just so much fun. I really enjoyed myself with this one. And I read most of it physically, but I did listen to portions of the audiobook as well. And very pleased to say that the audiobook narrator does a fantastic job. Beth and Devon are the 2 main characters. And I loved the historical aspects to it. I'm not a historical romance reader. So the fact that I picked this up in the first place, let alone gave it a 5-star rating, is wild to me. But yeah, this was perfection. And if you like that historical British humor, this one's for you, because it is so whimsy and fun and just everything that I wanted it to be. So really, really happy that I picked this one up, and I'm going to be getting myself a copy because I want to reread this as soon as possible. And then I need to pick up the next one in the series, which is, I think it's the map to something or other. And then the third one I think is coming out this year. So definitely want to pick up a physical copy for myself and reread it and continue the series, hopefully all this year, because I'm sucked in. The next one that I read is City of Glass by Cassandra Clare. This is book 3 in the Mortal Instruments series, so we're at the halfway point with the Mortal Instruments series, but it's also the final book in the original trilogy. And while I felt a little bit of fatigue with the series by the end of book 2, this one picked up. It was good. I will say there are some elements in the plot that felt a little bit rinse and repeat from the plot earlier in the story, but that's okay because the majority of this made up for that. There was a bit of a relationship with Simon in this, which dragged for me because Simon annoys me, and I just feel like he feels like Clary owes him something, and I hate that because she doesn't owe you anything. Just because you were her friend for a long time and you've loved her for a long time does not mean that you have right to her. Anyway, I will get off my pedestal about that, but yeah, the plot in this was fantastic. It had the right pacing. We did a lot of there was a lot of action and high stakes scenes in it, but we also got more character growth and development in the interpersonal relationships between them. So I really enjoyed this one. It was a 4.5 star for me. The thing that stopped it from being 5 stars was the element where, you know, we had the Jason Clary brother-sister relationship thing figured out, and that was done with. And then we brought in Sebastian, and now that is a thing that's happening. So that kind of familial uncertainty element to it was the only thing that stopped it from getting that 5-star feel for me. And when I rate the Mortal Instruments 5 and 4 stars and 4.5 or whatever, this is rating it based on a nostalgia. This is what I'm looking for. This is what it gave me. You know, I'm really enjoying feeling like I'm back in the early 2000s. Not a, oh my God, this is the greatest thing that I've ever read, 5 stars, does something completely different, you know, incredible, blah, blah, blah. This is what I'm really craving for in the world right now, because everything is shit and I'm getting it from these books and I'm really enjoying it. So that's what that rating is based on. So, you know, it feels a bit weird to rate something like the Ornithologist Field Guide to Love a 5-star and then have City of Glass sitting at almost a 5-star next to it, because they would not compare. This is never going to make it into my top books of 2025, whereas this has the potential to be in my top books of 2025. So, you know, whilst they're almost on the exact same rating, they're on a different level to each other. Anyway, the next book that I read is another reread for me, and that one is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. And this one I read for the buzzword reading challenge where the prompt for January was the word before or after. So I looked at my shelves because I didn't want to buy something, and I had already borrowed so many books from the library, so I knew that I needed to pick something from my shelves. This one was both short and something I had already read before, so I knew that I enjoy it and I knew that it would be an easy read. I kept the original rating that I gave this, and that's a 4-star rating. I did really enjoy it. I love the time travel elements. I love it's kind of like Midnight Library in that you get to see how different realities play out. So yeah, the time travel element to it was not really the focus of the book. I think it's more of an exploration on how people view decisions and choices that they've made, and the trajectory of their lives and that sort of thing. I'm glad that I reread that, and maybe now I will finally pick up the rest of the series. The next one that I read is The Red Scrolls of Magic by Cassandra Clare. This is the last Cassandra Clare book that I read in January, and unfortunately the one that I liked the least. This is The Eldest Curses Book 1, and it follows Alec Lightwood and Magnus Bane now that they're in a relationship and whilst they're in Europe. And I just feel like while I enjoyed the book and I really enjoy the characters, they're one of my favorite couples in the world, in the Shadowhunters world, I just felt like this was not really given the love and attention that was given to Cassandra Clare's other series in the Shadowhunters universe. So I feel like they were kind of done a little bit dirty in it. I still enjoyed being in this world and getting to read more about Magnus and Alec. So I'm intrigued to see if... I actually don't even know if there's more out in this particular series, but I'm intrigued to see if this gets any better, or if it's just going to be that kind of middle of the road book for me. This one I rated 3 stars because I enjoy the world, I enjoy the characters, I'm already attached to them. I just feel like the book itself did them no justice, and maybe that's the Mortal Instruments fatigue hitting again. So the second last book that I read in January was an audiobook as well, so I don't have the book here physically yet, but I am going to hold up the first book in the series. So the series is the Wayward Children series. Book 1 is Every Heart a Doorway. The book that I read was book 11 in the series, Through Gates of Garnet and Gold, and we're actually following the character from Every Heart a Doorway again. So it was fantastic to be back in the world with Nancy. I do think that Through Gates of Garnet and Gold could have been a full-length novel. I did rate it 5 stars because I really enjoy pretty much every installment that this series has. The only one that I haven't really enjoyed that much was the Green Grassfields horse one. I do wish that it was longer, which, being a novella series, it can't be longer, but I feel like it really would have worked well if it was longer. I do enjoy the dark aspects of it. I feel like the vibe is that maybe it was a little bit too bleak, but I think I just really enjoy being back in that world. And if you haven't already, which is crazy to say because I feel like to me this series has been a staple in the fantasy community for the longest time, you really need to pick up Every Heart a Doorway. Yeah, this series is always going to hold a top spot in my heart of favorite books of all time, and I'm already anticipating being devastated when it ends. I don't know when it's going to end. I have been avoiding that kind of news because I don't want it to end. And now we can move on to the final book that I read in January, which is great because I am tired. The final book that I read in January, which took me the entire month to read, and that's not because I struggled to read it, but because I purposefully spread it out over the entire month and read a little bit every day. And that is Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind by Yuval Noah Harari. This is a non-fiction book that is basically a timeline of all of human history and all of the things that led to today and where we could be going in the future if things keep going the way that they're going, and human habits and human traits and commentary on religion and the quest for power and intelligence and all of that good stuff. And it was extremely informative, but it wasn't written in a way that was dense textbook, all of that. It almost felt like fiction in the way that it was written, because it tells such a good story. And I felt like there were so many interesting facts in this that I could glean from it, and they were accessible. They, whilst might just be the surface level information, they made me think about so many different things. So this has been on my physical TBR since it came out. I've almost donated it so many times. Like, this actually, right before I read it, was in the donation bin that I had brought over from my old house. So that's how close I was to donating it again. And I wanted to continue the habit of reading nonfiction this year as well as fiction. So I'm trying to read one nonfiction a month minimum. And I saw this sitting on the top of the donation bin, and I thought, yeah, I want to read that. So I did that. Anyway, without getting too deep, this was a great choice to be my first nonfiction for the year. I'm now reading a couple of different nonfictions, so hopefully I'll be able to finish those in February and get some reviews out there. Anyway, I hope you have a fabulous rest of your week, rest of your day, whatever you're doing, and I will see you next time.